The lunchtime rush at the corner bistro was in full swing. Families chattered, couples shared quiet moments, and the clinking of cutlery filled the air. It was a scene of everyday harmony, a place where you'd expect nothing but good food and pleasant company. Amidst the cheerful chaos, a young girl named Lily sat alone at a small table, her nose buried in a book. She was about 12, with bright, curious eyes and a quiet demeanor. Lily loved this little bistro. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could escape into the worlds of her favorite stories. But on this particular Tuesday, her peaceful retreat was about to be shattered. A group of 3 girls from her school, led by a notoriously mean-spirited girl named Jessica, strutted into the restaurant. Their laughter was loud and sharp, cutting through the pleasant hum of the bistro. They spotted Lily immediately. A cruel smirk spread across Jessica's face as she and her friends swaggered over to Lily's table. They surrounded her, their presence casting a dark shadow over her book. "Well, well, look what we have here," Jessica sneered, snatching the book from Lily's hands. "Still reading baby books, Lily? I'm surprised you can even read the big words." Lily's face turned beet red. She reached for her book, her voice a small whisper. "Please give it back, Jessica." But Jessica just held it higher, dangling it teasingly. Her friends giggled, enjoying the spectacle. They began to mock Lily, their voices growing louder, their insults more pointed. They called her names, made fun of her clothes, and mimicked her quiet nature. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, and she shrank in her seat, wishing she could disappear. Several adults at nearby tables glanced over, a flicker of concern on their faces. But they quickly looked away, burying themselves in their meals or conversations. They didn't want to get involved. It was just kids being kids, right? But not everyone was willing to turn a blind eye. In a corner booth, a group of men sat quietly, observing the scene. They were large, imposing figures, clad in leather vests adorned with the emblem of a local motorcycle club, the Iron Sentinels. To the casual observer, they might have looked intimidating, but behind their rugged exteriors were hearts of gold. They were fathers, uncles, and brothers who had formed their club not just for the love of riding, but to protect and serve their community. They had a strict code: stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. The leader of the group, a man with a graying beard and kind, watchful eyes named Bear, had seen enough. He exchanged a look with his friends. No words were needed. They rose from their booth in unison. The sudden movement drew the attention of the entire restaurant. The air grew thick with anticipation as the 4 large men made their way across the room, their heavy boots thudding softly on the floor. They didn't look angry. They looked determined. They stopped right behind Jessica and her friends, who were so engrossed in their bullying that they hadn't even noticed the towering figures behind them. Bear cleared his throat. It wasn't a loud sound, but it carried the weight of authority. Jessica and her friends froze, slowly turning around. Their jaws dropped as they looked up and up at the bikers looming over them. The smirks vanished from their faces, replaced by wide-eyed fear. "I believe," Bear said, his voice a low, calm rumble, "that you have something that belongs to this young lady." He gestured towards the book still clutched in Jessica's hand. Her hand trembled as she looked from the book to Bear's stern face. Another biker, known as Tank, stepped forward. He was a mountain of a man, but he spoke with a gentle tone. "We have a little rule in our group," he explained, his eyes fixed on the 3 bullies. "We don't tolerate disrespect, not to anyone, especially not to someone who's just trying to enjoy her afternoon in peace." Jessica, stammering, tried to justify her actions. "We were just joking around," she squeaked. Bear raised an eyebrow. "Does it look like she's joking?" he asked, pointing to Lily, who was now openly crying, silent tears streaming down her face. The bullies fell silent, shame and fear mixing on their faces. The entire restaurant was now watching, captivated. The patrons who had previously ignored the situation were now fully invested, a sense of collective guilt and admiration washing over them. Bear knelt down beside Lily's table, his large frame making him seem even more like a gentle giant. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lily," she whispered, wiping her eyes. "Well, Lily," Bear said with a warm smile, "I think this book belongs to you." He held out his hand, and a terrified Jessica quickly placed the book in it. Bear carefully wiped a smudge off the cover before handing it back to Lily. He then turned his attention back to the bullies. He didn't yell or threaten. Instead, he spoke to them with a quiet intensity that was far more impactful. "Let me tell you something about courage," he began. "It takes zero courage to gang up on one person. It's easy, it's weak. Real courage, real strength is about lifting people up, not tearing them down. It's about using your voice to defend someone, not to hurt them." The girls stared at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. The weight of his words and the silent judgment of the entire restaurant was a lesson they would never forget. The manager, who had been frozen in place, finally scurried over. Is everything all right here?" he asked nervously. Bear stood up to his full height. "Everything is fine now," he said, his gaze shifting to the manager. "But you should know that you have some wonderful patrons here," he said, gesturing to Lily, "and some who need to learn about respect." He then looked at Jessica and her friends. "I expect you to apologize to this young lady, and then I think it's time for you to leave." Humiliated, the three girls mumbled a hasty apology to Lily and scurried out of the restaurant as fast as they could. A spontaneous round of applause broke out in the bistro. People were smiling. Some even had tears in their eyes. The bikers had done what everyone else had been too afraid or too apathetic to do. They hadn't used force or aggression. They had used their presence and their principles to diffuse an ugly situation and stand up for justice. Bear turned back to Lily, whose tears had now been replaced by a look of awe and gratitude. "You all right, kiddo?" he asked. She nodded, clutching her book to her chest like a shield. "Tell you what," Bear said, a twinkle in his eye, "lunch is on us today. And any time you're here, if anyone ever bothers you again, you just look for us. The Iron Sentinels are your friends." He and his crew returned to their booth, and a few minutes later, a waitress brought Lily a huge slice of chocolate cake, courtesy of her new protectors. The other patrons in the restaurant seemed to take their cue from the bikers. Several people stopped by Lily's table to offer her a kind word, to tell her she was brave, to apologize for not stepping in sooner. The atmosphere in the restaurant had completely transformed from one of awkward tension to one of warmth and community. Lily sat there, finishing her cake, her heart full. She had come to the bistro seeking solitude in her books, but she had found something far more valuable, a community of unexpected heroes. The bikers, with their leather vests and roaring engines, had shown her that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride motorcycles. They taught everyone in that restaurant a powerful lesson that day. Kindness is a strength, and courage is about standing up for what's right, no matter how small the act may seem. As the bikers finally got up to leave, they gave Lily a final nod and a smile. And as she watched them go, Lily knew she would never forget the day the bikers didn't stay silent. Thank you so much for watching. This story is a reminder that we all have the power to be a hero for someone. A small act of courage can make a world of difference. If you were inspired by this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content that will warm your heart. We'll see you in the next video.